This is basically the start of something I've been wanting to do for quite a while now, which is talking about life, about politics, about sports, about music, about everything here on YouTube, obviously in English, because I've been teaching English. I've been a translator and interpreter here in Brazil. In fact, it's been 10 years. We're in 2021, so, since 2011, I've been teaching English. And I got a couple of subjects I would like to mention with you guys for basically whoever wants to hear about them. And I would like to start off by talking about our president here in Brazil, our current president Bolsonaro. That, I voted for him, I supported him for quite a while, and I've been very disappointed with him. Basically because he has been a traitor ever since he took office. So, I don't really intend on voting for him anymore, although last week because you know how our country goes, right? This is one of the craziest countries in the world. It's a blast country, mostly, but we've got no tornadoes, we've got no earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. We don't have that sort of thing. Although our problem is people and how they behave and the lack of education of these people. So what happens to Brazil is that we are one of the most violent countries. We're one of the most, one of the countries with the largest criminal rates. So you can imagine this country is no easy place to be living in. So it's been quite a challenge ever since democracy has been installed in Brazil, which take us back to 1985. That's when the military dictatorship ended here in Brazil. We didn't have proper elections until like 92, where we elected Collor. That was his last name, Fernando Collor. Some say he was sort of like a good president somehow, but the thing is, he took people's money from all their savings account, because that was part of a plan of an economic recovery. The fact is, from day to night, all of a sudden, people were without anything in their bank account. So that was pretty traumatic. I was just around 3 years old, so I have no memories of that time. But the fact is, it was pretty traumatic times for people. You can't imagine not having any money from day to night, so in your account, obviously. So that was that was something that marked the beginning of the 90s here for Brazil. The thing is, he got impeached. That was the first president in the history of Brazil who got impeached. And thereafter was a guy named Itamar Franco. He was a pretty good president. He implemented Plano Real, or the president who came after him, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, was actually his minister, his economy minister. He was the guy who actually drew the plan, and actually this plan was just implemented post 94, which is especially important year for the history of Brazil, as Fernando Henrique Cardoso got elected, and basically filled with privatizations this new currency that Brazil needed to implement for 100th time. Also, with the implementation of the new economic plan, Brazil has had, I'm gonna say, dozens of economic plans that all failed throughout this whole, I'm gonna say, second half of the 20th century. So Brazil has had dozens, tens of economic plans. None of them worked. So the only one that did was actually Plano Real, which is the one that we're living currently today with Real, our Brazilian currency, that works well, obviously, with some inflation, but that was actually the main problem of Brazil in the 90s, 80s and 90s. Inflation was just something that Brazil's population used to live with. So you can imagine being in Brazil, earning your salary of, let's say, $1,000, I'm gonna put, and I don't know, I'm gonna say a dinner at a medium average restaurant costing 40 reais. The thing is, with this huge inflation that Brazil used to have, on the next week, the same lunch, the same dinner is gonna cost the double, triple, quadruple in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. So by the end of the month, you couldn't even buy the stuff that you were used to. So Fernando Henrique Cardoso, with this economic team, basically solved the problem with this great guy called Gustavo Franco, along with Pedro Malan, great guy also, and a few others, obviously, because an economic team of a country of the size of Brazil, you know, it takes, takes size to it. So we were just used to inflation. Fernando Henrique Cardoso solved our problem. Then came Lula. He is a complicated character because he's a leftist, so he's always been a socialist, communist even. He used to belong from syndicates and unions and stuff, and tried to be president a couple of times, including 94 where he lost. Since 88, I'm gonna say, maybe. And the thing is, he got elected in 2002 after trying several times, promising loads of things, promising the end of corruption that Fernando Henrique Cardoso's government wasn't so famous for. So it wasn't really a corrupt government, not at all. There were scandals, yes, mostly related to their privatization. So basically what people say is that some companies were schemed to be privatized already. So they had schemes underneath going on with private organizations. So it was already set, basically, for these companies to be sold to a specific group of people. That's what basically happened. But it wasn't really a corrupt government. And then what Lula used to say is that he was going to end corruption in Brazil, and obviously help the population, because you all know that the leftists, that's what they preach, that's what they say they do. So, you know, help the poor. And I'm gonna say in the first few years, Lula did a good government, because basically he betrayed the left. So if you're a leftist, if you're a communist, if you're a socialist, you will have been betrayed by Lula, because he took some liberal economists to his side, including Henrique Meirelles, very good economist here from Brazil as well, who worked in Bank of Boston and many others. Extensive curriculum, really great guy. So Lula basically reaped everything that Fernando Henrique Cardoso sowed. And in his third year of government, 2005, it was revealed that there was a scheme, a corruption scheme, involving congressmen, in which the government would basically pay monthly to approve some projects, laws proposed by the government. So, which is obviously illegal, and this is an attempt against democracy, if you guys think about it. So this was basically known as mensalão. For those Brazilian who are watching, you know what I'm talking about. You basically know everything that I'm talking about, but just to give an idea how to put this into another language, into its sequence. Some will agree, some won't with my opinions. Anyway, it's part of the game. This scandal, corruption scandal, mensalão, was huge at the time, 2005, 6, and he got re-elected. Even though there was this huge scandal, the economy was going really well, obviously due to the measures from Fernando Henrique Cardoso, the previous president, that obviously Lula has implemented too, has followed on. So this has been a good side of Lula's presidency. He has kept on doing the same things that Fernando Henrique Cardoso was doing to put Brazil back on track, economically speaking. So Lula privatized a few companies, sold a few companies, extinguished another ones, created many others obviously, but maintained fluctual exchange and inflation goals and all of that, which is obviously all very important for one country's economy at a specific period of time. So his second term was good also, because obviously the economy was doing great due to the intelligent measures that Lula had applied to the economy. Although the scandals continued, there were a couple, including BNDES, which is a national bank here in Brazil that invests in our own economy, and also scandals involving the health system, the Amazon up north in Brazil. Now the problem started when Lula appointed Dilma to succeed him. Dilma has been his chief of staff, basically, and she was the president of the board of Petrobras, our state-run oil company. So this company was being ripped off for billions and billions of reais. And this woman was the president of the board of the company, right? So she got elected in 2010, first year, and her government was basically a little disaster ever since. So since the beginning, she didn't really know how to deal. Although in 2011, 2012, Brazil was still doing good economically speaking, socially speaking, reasonably. Anyway, so she got re-elected in 2014, which was a disaster for everybody that followed the news and everything that was going on, because this big scandal in Petrobras, Lava Jato, was starting. So in 2014, everybody knew what was going on to Petrobras. Everybody knew that all of these major constructor companies were basically stealing money from Petrobras, with everybody knowing they were doing this, and obviously politicians involved in the situation, earning billions and billions. Dilma was re-elected in 2014. 1 year later, all the protests, all the demonstrations on the streets began. Millions and millions of people, almost every week on the streets, all throughout Brazil. So in São Paulo, here in Avenida Paulista, very close to where I live, that was huge. Basically, 1 million people. There were 4 or 5 times that were over 1 million people on the streets protesting on a Sunday against the presidency. So Dilma ended up being impeached because basically you guys know that an impeachment process is both a political and judicial process, right? So she got impeached obviously for the political reasons, due to Brazil's economy being trashed down, and it was truly going downhill. So it was a disaster economically speaking. We were talking 2015. And also there was this, what we called pedalada fiscal, which is deviating money from the state-run banks to pay your own debt. So this is something absolutely forbidden by Brazilian law, and Dilma did it. So she got impeached due to this true single factor. This was 2016, June 2016, and then her vice president Michel Temer came along. He took power, and I'm gonna tell you, it was a great president. Looking back, comparing to Bolsonaro and Dilma herself, Temer was a great president. He did some very important reforms here in Brazil that we were needing, especially in like a high school reform, very important in terms of curriculum, all of these subjects, the school subjects, and some flexibilizations on high school. So that was very important too. A ceiling of expenses, what we call teto de gastos here in Brazil too. He implemented that. The government was just spending too much money and all the time pushing this limit forward. And Michel Temer implemented this to stop this, and it actually did. So that was pretty effective too. He started on the pension reform that was further on implemented by Bolsonaro in 2011. By Bolsonaro in 2019. So this was two of the greatest achievements by Michel Temer. What was the labor reform as well? That was the greatest one, the greatest achievement, the greatest deed from his term. He just stayed there for 2.5 years in office, but these three measures on their own represent a lot. So labor reform, that was huge, ending all of our, because Brazil has been the country with most unions in the world, with thousands and thousands, and receiving public money. So every worker had to work, I don't know, let's say 2 days a year to pay these guys. So it's an absurd. Nowadays you can actually choose whether or not you're gonna pay union syndicates and so on. This ended with Michel Temer in 2017. So good year for Brazil. Brazil's economy was going back. It was back on track because Henrique Meirelles came back. He was back in government. He was back in the game, helping Brazil to follow on with our reforms so needed. So Temer stayed there until the end of 2018 when we had elections, and the dualism in Brazil from right to left was there again. This time not with PSDB, the Social Democrats, against PT, the Labor, so the Socialists. This was the dualism that we had. We've had this for, I don't know, I'm gonna say 20 years plus. So now we didn't have this one, PSDB and PT. We have Bolsonaro and PT. Lula was convicted for Lava Jato's many accusations, and Haddad, former minister, former education minister, Dilma's minister, and former mayor of São Paulo, was running against Bolsonaro. So we had this dualism from left to right again, and Bolsonaro ended winning with many, many promises. So this has been a time of hope, time of optimism here in Brazil. And nowadays, look where we are. He's denying the vaccine. He's denying the virus itself. So he's saying, oh, it's just a little flu. Oh, what can I do about it? So yeah, this has been a huge disappointment. And I'm gonna make more videos talking about Bolsonaro. I know the video was meant to be about him, but basically we've just drawn a big picture here to talk about Brazil's history, and then maybe on the next video we can really comment on Bolsonaro's promises, what he represented, and what we have nowadays.